If you're planning to play your Switch 2 on the go, you might need to look at your battery first. In this video, I go over everything regarding the Switch 2 battery, including the bug that's plaguing a lot of Switches out there. And we'll also go over estimated battery life and how to improve your Switch's battery life for the future. Let's get right into it. In case you're unaware, Nintendo officially stated that the Switch will take approximately 3 hours to fully charge at zero, and when fully charged, the battery duration will be approximately 2 to 6.5 hours. It's an estimation, and right now, with a lot of the Switch 2 games and even Switch 1 games, we are seeing it actually lean more toward the 2-hour or even shorter. There has been a lot of discourse online on like if this is even great, but this similar thing happened to the Switch 1 when it came out. And it is honestly up to you whether you think having a 2-hour battery life is good for games that you actually want to play. Of course, you know, the battery itself has a capacity of 5,220 milliamp hours, which gives us that range of 2 to 6.5. Of course, with the Switch being more powerful and a similar size battery, we're going to expect a decrease in duration. I don't have the articles pulled up, but I believe the original Switch had a battery life of 4.5 hours to 9 hours. So it's almost like a 50% decrease on some games. This article from the Gaming Bible actually kind of puts it pretty well. This is pretty much in line with the Steam Deck's battery life. There's only so much battery efficiency you can have when playing higher and higher quality games. And I think Cyberpunk is probably the best baseline when it comes to how the Switch is going to handle high intensive games. When it comes to Cyberpunk, we've had multiple tests across multiple different channels and articles saying it runs about 2 to 2.5 hours. This video from Sam Alexander Reviews actually just had this running in circles for over 2 hours just to see how long the battery would last. This was at a screen brightness of 80% with Wi-Fi on. And I think that's where a lot of people are a little confused. It depends on the situation that you're playing your Switch in. If you have HDR, if you're running 120 hertz, it's gonna tank the battery life. And I'm not saying to not do it, but if you want that gaming experience, you're gonna have to expect a lower battery life. People all over Reddit are complaining about the battery life. There's been multiple reports, 1% per minute of gameplay. You also lose about 8% overnight in sleep mode. Even this user said, I lost 80% in sleep mode last night. And it's important to note, like, downloading a bunch of games in sleep mode or while in the background while playing games will also tank your battery life. When having a solid connection to Wi-Fi and constantly using and accessing data, it's gonna affect your battery life, and I think a lot of people need to realize that. Another game as well that's a really good benchmark is the launch title for the Switch 2, that being Mario Kart World, and we're getting similar results to Cyberpunk as well. Alex from Nintendo Life did a really good video describing what I just described, being the downloads, 120 hertz, all affecting the console's battery life performance. But he tested Mario Kart World himself, actively playing it, which is great. I think the whole spinning around isn't really a good representation of active gameplay. But when he did it, I think he said it lasted almost exactly 2 hours, which is a little disappointing being on the lesser side of the estimation. More semi-demanding games like Breath of the Wild are reportedly getting about 3 hours, and then there are some Switch games like Xenoblade that don't even have a patch yet that still only get about 2 to 2.5 hours. That's basically all the tests we have seen from a bunch of different people. Any high demanding game is going to last about 2 hours, which is the lower end of the estimation that Nintendo gives. There have been a few reports of it lasting under 2 hours, but I genuinely think they aren't running a really good test, maybe having downloads in the background or, not having proper ventilation or something like that. One other thing to mention when it comes to the battery life that could be throwing a wrench in all of our testing and a lot of people's perception of the battery is the day one bug. So basically, your battery life indicator would not reflect the actual battery life. And multiple sources, including people on Reddit, says the Switch 2 battery life isn't as bad as it seems. Let it run a full cycle to recalibrate reporting. And Nintendo even said an official statement of this as well, So the Switch 2 appears to report battery life draining quicker than it actually is out of the box. Breath of the Wild was draining a battery around 1% every 2 minutes for me, which I was a little disappointed in. When I reached 1%, however, it continued running for about 30 minutes extra before dying. And this is what a lot of people have been noticing. Even though it says 1%, it still lasts about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. It says, remember, let the battery fully discharge one time in order to recalibrate the battery reporting. Also, keep in mind that the battery will be good bit worse when downloading games. And this is exactly what a lot of people are trying to tell to the general public that might not know how battery life kind of operates. And it's worth noting that a lot of games on the Switch 1, like Breath of the Wild, ran about like 2.5 hours when the console first came out. And then the console got a chipset upgrade, or so it handled processes a little bit better and increased battery life to almost 4 hours when it came to, let's just say, Breath of the Wild. And the OLED and the Switch Lite both reflect that. It's a little unfortunate that Nintendo couldn't really use what they learned during that process and bring it over to the Switch 2. The way the games run is different because Switch 1 games are actually emulated and not ran natively on the Switch 2. So I don't think they could just directly move what they learned from the OLED and the Switch Lite over to the Switch 2. They're going to have to start from the ground up and figure out another way to improve battery life in the future. And hopefully that happens, or not, because we all kind of bought a Switch 2. We don't really want to buy another one. When talking about the Switch 2 battery display bug, Nintendo has released many statements on how to fix it. Of course, update your system to the latest firmware if you haven't already. And I'm going to warn you guys, these steps are kind of complicated just to get a proper indicator light. Nintendo officially says, before you start, you will need a Switch 2 console, Switch 2 AC adapter, and access to the internet. Confirm you're using the adequately powerful AC adapter. Basically, just use the one in the box that you got. Confirm that your console has the latest update. Power off the console, and then this is important. This is the enter battery recovery mode. Press and hold down the volume up and volume down buttons. Press the power R button once you turn the system on. Keep holding down the volume buttons until the menu for recovery mode appears. Navigating to this menu should reset the battery level meter. And it is a good thing to note that they want you to deplete the battery first all the way before doing this. Power off the console again by pressing and holding the power button until it turns off. Power the console back on and monitor the situation. It even said that you might have to do this multiple times to get it to fix. And even if the situation is not resolved, that Nintendo will actually do it for you and maybe even replace some parts. It says navigating to recovery mode menu should be enough to reset the battery level meter. If you follow the above steps multiple times and the battery continues, you display the remaining battery levels incorrectly, the console will need to be sent in for service. And this is honestly similar to the Joy-Con situation that it had when it came to Drift, where you could actually send in your Joy-Cons and Nintendo will repair it for you for free. But you could essentially just start a repair, and it's the same type of process when it came to submitting, the Joy-Cons or the Pro Controller stick drift. Fun fact, I actually did use this service once when my dock actually broke. I dropped my dock once and then it wasn't actually displaying to the TV screen. It was a super simple process. I actually got it for free as well, just by asking. This was before I actually had a job, when I had my original Switch. And after communicating with the support representative at Nintendo, I was like, I don't think I could afford $20. I think it was 20. And they're like, okay, we'll waive the price. And I'm like, what? Okay. But yeah, they did say that they'll be doing this free of charge for anyone that does have any issues. But it's a little unfortunate that something like this has happened, especially because the Switch 1 had Joy-Con problems. We haven't heard anything about Joy-Con problems yet. But this is something that happened. But this right now is a battery problem, and it sounds like it could have been a smoother launch if it didn't have it already. Some quick tips to improve your battery life when gaming if you do want to extend it or help save your battery in the long run. Now, one thing I did do when I first got the Switch, after I was notified by someone in chat that you could stop charging around 90%. My phone actually does the same exact thing, and this is supposed to extend your battery life upwards to, I think, 3 years over the lifespan of your Switch. Because if you charge it to 100% and then deplete it, then 100% then deplete it, it's going to put a lot more strain on the battery. So charging it to 90% doesn't give you as much strain as 100% would. Some tips when it does come to extending your battery life, of course, is lowering your screen brightness, more energy to display those colors, turning off HDR. And I honestly think I'll probably do this for my console because I love HDR. Don't get me wrong. My TV, Mario Kart World, Breath of the Wild looks so good, but I don't think I need that experience on the go. For me, when playing games on the go with a handheld console, I know it's gonna be a compromised experience. I'm not gonna get 100% what I would get in my living room. I'm not even sitting on my couch. I'm normally like on a bus or on a train, on the subway, in a kind of uncomfortable position. So that's already, I definitely will be turning off HDR when it does come to handheld mode. When it does come to turning off 120 hertz, there isn't really a lot of games that support it. So you could turn it off and just not use it entirely. I think the only game right now that supports 120 hertz is Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. So I don't think you're really missing out much if you turn it off. We'll have to see. Maybe Splatoon 4 probably will offer 120 hertz mode, but you could always turn it off. I don't know what it is afterward, maybe 60 hertz. We lived with the Switch 1 and the Switch OLED. I think we could live through this if you really want to. And again, for me, playing handheld is always going to be a compromised experience. So I'm okay with this. But that seems to be everything regarding the Switch 2's battery life. Honestly, again, I think 2 hours is okay. I'm not going to say it's good because 2 hours is honestly the bare minimum. Anything less than 2, you're not even lasting like a full-length movie. You go to the movie theater expecting to take 2 hours of your time. If you have a Switch, I think you expect for it to take at least 2 hours of your time, curing 2 hours of boredom. So it being 2 hours, that's okay. Of course, I would love it to be 6 hours, but we're gonna get what we're getting. You can play Mario Kart World on the go. That's great. I am interested to see what the discourse would be in the future regarding the Switch 2's battery life the longer that we do have it. I think a lot more people will understand that turning off HDR, turning up 120 hertz will actually improve the battery life. And I'm interested to see how that'll affect the public perception of it. Because right now, it doesn't really look too great for Nintendo. But we all already have our Switch 2s. Until the OLED comes out, we're gonna have to live with this battery life. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you tomorrow, powering down.